Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on a piece of engineering that's pretty much everywhere, in skyscrapers, ships, you name it. But it's designed to be totally invisible. We're talking about how to create the perfect seal. So, to really get why this is such a big deal, think about this for a second. Imagine you've built the strongest, most impenetrable fortress ever. What is its single biggest weakness? Yup, the openings. Every single time a cable or a pipe has to go through a wall, you've just created a potential point of failure. And this isn't some niche problem. It's a massive challenge for anyone building anything important, from nuclear power plants to the data centers that basically run our lives. And we're not talking about small annoyances here. These seemingly tiny gaps can lead to some seriously big, catastrophic problems. Let's dig into what's really on the line. What's so wild is how one single unsealed hole can be a superhighway for so many different kinds of trouble. A gap that lets in a flood could also be the exact same path that fire and smoke take to spread through a building. Or dangerous gas. It's this multi-headed monster of a risk that needs a really, really smart solution. So, the big question is, how do you possibly solve for all of these threats at the same time? Well, this is where a really clever, super flexible system comes into the picture. Okay, so the secret sauce here is something called multi-diameter technology. Instead of needing a totally different seal for every single size of cable, you have one block that can adapt. You just peel away layers until you get a perfect, snug fit around whatever you're running through it. It's one of those ideas that's so simple, it's brilliant. This is a total game changer, a complete shift in thinking. The old way was messy and permanent. You drill a very specific hole, fill it with some gooey compound, and just pray you'd never have to change anything. This new way, it's clean, it's mechanical, and this is the killer feature, it's future-proof. If you need to add or change a cable years down the line, you can do it without wrecking the seal. It's not just a part, it's a whole strategy for the long run. All right, so how does this whole thing actually work? Let's get our hands dirty and break down the parts to see how they build that perfect wall. Okay, so let's look at the key players here. First, you've got the frame. That's your sturdy outer structure. Inside go the sealing modules, those clever peelable blocks we just talked about. Stay plates help keep everything organized in neat layers. And then you have the hero of the story, the compression wedge. This little piece is what activates the whole system and turns all those separate parts into one solid, unbreachable barrier. Okay, so we've got the parts list. Now let's see how it all comes together to create this certified protective seal. It's actually a pretty straightforward 5-step process. But hang on, before we get to the steps, I gotta share this one detail from the guide because I just love it. The goal isn't to just cram the block around the cable. No, it's about precision. You're aiming for this tiny little gap between 0.1 and 1.0 millimeters. That's how you know you've nailed the fit for a perfect seal. That's just pure smart engineering right there. So the process itself, it just makes sense. You secure the frame, you run your cables through, then you do the cool part, peeling the layers on the modules to get that perfect fit for each one. You pack them all in the frame, maybe with a bit of lubricant to help them slide in nicely, and for the grand finale, you tighten that compression wedge. As you turn it, it expands, puts the squeeze on everything, and bam, it creates the single, solid, perfectly sealed block. And that's the magic of it. You take all these individual pieces, the frame, the modules, the plates, the wedge, and you bring them together to make one single, solid, certified barrier. It's an amazing final product from such a simple, modular idea. So we've covered the how, but the real story, the reason this matters so much is the where. Because you'll find this system in some of the most intense, high-stakes places you can possibly imagine. Okay, first up, picture a massive ship or an oil rig getting hammered by a storm out on the open sea. One little breach in the hull below the waterline, that's a disaster. These seals are what stand between the crew and catastrophic flooding or fire. They literally keep the ship together and the people safe. All right, now let's go deep underground. Think about a mine or a tunnel buried thousands of feet down. The seals here have to fight off crushing water pressure, day in and day out to protect the critical power systems. Down there, failure is just not an option. And then there's a place that's a little less gritty, but just as critical, the cloud. I mean, our entire digital world lives inside these giant data centers. They have to be perfectly protected from fire, water, even dust, to keep all that information, our information, safe and online. These seals are literally protecting the physical heart of the internet.
And honestly, the list just goes on and on. We're talking nuclear power plants, massive wind turbines, airports, railways, basically anywhere you have important stuff passing through a wall and you absolutely cannot afford a failure. This is the kind of protection you need for both safety and just keeping things running.
It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? Our whole world is built on connections for power, for data, for everything. And working silently behind the scenes, holding back all kinds of chaos, are these amazingly simple, perfectly designed seals. Makes you wonder, what other invisible bits of genius are out there, quietly keeping our world from falling apart?